Live from New Delhi, you're watching DT India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh, coming up in the next hour. Israel begins ground operation in northern Gaza. Qatar, Egypt push for joint efforts to implement ceasefire. European leaders discuss support for Ukraine in Brussels. US-Russia ceasefire talks to begin on Monday. Trump to sign order to shut down Department of Education, calling it a big con job, needs support of Democrat senators. India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar hails stronger India-Latin America and Caribbean relationship, flags need to de-risk global economy from power concentration. In sports, Khelo India Para Games 2025 declared open. Over 1,300 athletes are set to take part in the second edition of the Mega Games. After Israel began conducting ground activities in northern Gaza Strip, Hamas has said on Thursday it launched a barrage of rockets against Tel Aviv. Yemen Houthis also fired a ballistic missile towards Ben Gurion airport. Israel's army said that it successfully intercepted most of the missiles launched against it. Meanwhile, Qatar and Egypt have highlighted the need to ramp up efforts to reach a ceasefire deal.
Tensions soar as the ceasefire commitments were shattered in West Asia amidst heightened Israeli offensive in the region. Israel said on Thursday that it had begun conducting ground activities in the northern Gaza Strip along the coastal route in Beit Lahia. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu also visited an undercover unit base in the West Bank on Wednesday. Netanyahu called it an important visit as Israel continues an intense conflict against Hamas in the Gaza Strip.
This is always important, but it is especially important now because as we are waging an intense war against Hamas in the Gaza Strip, we are aware of the possibility that another larger and more intense front could be opened here in Judea and Samaria.
Meanwhile, Hamas armed wing said on Thursday that it launched a barrage of rockets against Tel Aviv as a response to its airstrikes in Gaza, hours after it said that the talks with mediators were underway while reiterating its commitment to the deal signed in January. The Israel military said that it successfully intercepted one projectile fired from Gaza, while two others fell in an uninhabited area after air raid sirens sounded in Tel Aviv. Earlier on Thursday, Israel's military also intercepted a ballistic missile launched from Yemen towards Ben Gurion airport amid US President Donald Trump's threat to punish Iran for supporting the Houthis. Meanwhile, Qatar and Egypt, key mediators between Israel and Hamas, said that their foreign ministers held a phone call on Thursday wherein they reiterated the need to boost efforts to implement the three phases of the Gaza ceasefire deal. With revived offensives intensifying in West Asia and Israeli Prime Minister's stern warning to continue such military activities till the hostages are released, uncertainties continue to loom over the peace efforts in the region. Ayushi Bhatnagar's report for DD India.
And let's talk about the Russia-Ukraine war. Fighting continues in Kursk and other battlegrounds, even though a conclusive ceasefire negotiation could take place between US and Russian representatives early next week. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, remember, has already agreed to Donald Trump brokered peace deal. Meanwhile, Europe articulates its own role in the conflict and what the security scenario could look like in the days ahead. While talks of temporary ceasefire gain momentum between Russia and Ukraine, guns are far from falling silent. Intense fighting continues in Kursk region in western Russia. On Thursday, Ukraine struck Russia's Engels strategic bomber base with drones, triggering a major blast. The target is about 700 kilometers from the front lines of the war. 10 people were reportedly injured in the attack. Meanwhile, European leaders gathered in Brussels for a two-day summit that centered on the support package for Ukraine. The heads of state were joined by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky via video conference.
Für uns ist zentral, dass die Ukraine
For us, it is crucial that Ukraine remains an independent, sovereign, and democratic nation, that it can continue on its path towards the European Union, and that it has a strong army of its own, even after a peace agreement.
Ich glaube, dass die Europäische Union
I believe that European Union could make a good and significant contribution to these talks, and we should not make ourselves smaller than we are.
On the same day, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer was pictured aboard a submarine in a rare showcasing of the country's nuclear deterrent. International military planners are meeting in London to discuss a peacekeeping force to support Ukraine.
Today we're looking at plans to keep the sea, the sky and borders safe in Ukraine, working with the Ukrainians, because I'm clear in my mind that if there is a deal, and I hope there is, that we need to do the planning beforehand, not after the deal, which is why I'm pleased that we're able to get to this stage today.
Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov has flagged militarization of Europe as a concern.
The signals from Brussels and European capitals now concern, let's say, plans to militarize Europe, which is clearly at odds with the mood of the presidents of Russia and United States to seek ways to enter a peaceful settlement process.
Russia and United States are set to discuss possible Ukrainian peace settlement at a meeting in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia on Monday. Shubhendu Ghosh's report for DD India. And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky told EU leaders that Russia continues to attack Ukraine's energy infrastructure. He said fresh Russian strike hit Ukraine's power system just last night. This comes despite Russian President Putin agreeing with the US to halt attacks, particularly on energy infrastructure. Zelensky alleged that nothing has changed on the ground, urged EU leaders to maintain sanctions on Russia until its withdrawal. He also called for stricter action against sanction evasion.
Yesterday evening, another Russian strike hit our energy infrastructure. We in Ukraine face this every day and night, you know it. And despite Putin's words about allegedly being ready to stop the attacks, nothing has changed. Are very, very necessary. Sanctions must remain in place until Russia starts withdrawing from our land and fully compensates for the damage caused by its aggression. I urge you to keep fighting against sanctions, evasion schemes.
In other news, India's External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar shared his vision for stronger India-Latin American-Caribbean relationship at the 10th CII India-Latin American-Caribbean Conclave in New Delhi on Thursday. Speaking at a session on the theme Advancing Economic Alliances for Collaborative Growth, he said that in current times of post-COVID era and conflicts, the need of the hour is to de-risk global economy from concentration of power. He also stressed that the focus should be on reliable and resilient supply chains.
Clearly, there is a need to de-risk the global economy from the dangers of over-concentration in any single geography. But we also need to build reliable and resilient supply chains. At the same time, because we have now moved decisively, irrevocably into the digital era, we need to ensure trust and transparency when it comes to selection of partners.
And Minister Jaishankar also referred to Prime Minister Modi's recent visit to Guyana for India CARICOM Summit, saying that the potential of ties with the region lies mainly in trade, tech, tourism, talent and tradition.
Last year, while visiting the LAC region, Prime Minister Narendra Modi announced the development of a portal, partnerindia.org. It would focus on the 5 T's: trade, technology, tourism, talent and tradition. Once developed and boarded, it would be the port of first call for those who are keen to engage with each other. We expect this portal to materialize by the end of the year, and hopefully it would contribute to making this conclave an even smarter deliberation.
An External Affairs Minister held a comprehensive discussion on bilateral cooperation with Bolivia's Foreign Minister, Celinda Sosa Lunda. The talks underscored India's commitment to strengthening ties, highlighted by the recent opening of a new embassy in La Paz. Furthering the partnership, both nations signed an agreement on quick impact projects, marking another step in deepening collaboration. With the aim to make cancer cure accessible and affordable for the world, an MOU between International Atomic Energy Agency and Tata Memorial Hospital was signed on Thursday, recognizing Tata Memorial Centre as an anchor centre for this mission. DD India's Shyama Mishra gets us more.
Rafael Mariano Grossi, the Director General of International Atomic Energy Agency, today signed an MOU with Tata Memorial Centre in India's financial capital, Mumbai, for IAEA's Ray of Hope initiative. TMH will be an anchor centre between International Atomic Energy Agency and the Tata Memorial Centre. Under this initiative, IAEA intends to provide training, support, equipment, research and innovation.
The IEA has been working in the past with India and with the Tata Center, but we have come to the conclusion jointly that the level of the situation in terms of cancer cases in the world requires more collaboration, more cooperation. So this is why we decided to join our efforts. The signing of this memorandum of understanding means that now the Tata Medical Center is going to be what we call an anchor center, which means that we are going to have dedicated teams working together, IEA and Tata teams working together, going to countries, providing training, technology as may be needed. So it's a very important moment for us.
DG Grossi also emphasized through Rays of Hope's initiative that IAEA will identify and define anchor centers, cancer centers, organizing training courses for healthcare providers, also participate in IAEA coordinated research projects, and also provide experts in mentorship to other radiotherapy and medical imaging centers in the world. He also said the world institutions will have to come together in order to make cancer cure accessible and affordable, and this initiative is a work in that direction. He also added that India is a natural choice when it comes to choosing the anchor center for the initiative, adding that the work of TMH is exemplary.
What we need is to garner and to get as much international cooperation as possible. There are institutions, foundations, philanthropists like the Tata family did all over the world, which are willing to help. What we need to offer them is realistic and effective programs that can deliver instead of dispersing the resources on bureaucracy. So what we have here is a hospital, basically, that cares for people. You have an international organization, we join hands and we go out there just for that.
Shambhu Kumaran, the ambassador of India to Republic of Austria, Montenegro, Holy See, and the permanent representative to the international organizations in Vienna, reiterated India's commitment towards IAEA activities, including Program of Action for Cancer Therapy. Present among the dignitaries were Dr. A.K. Mohanty, the Secretary, DAE, and Chairman of Atomic Energy Commission, and also Dr. Sudeep Gupta, who is the Director of TMC. Shyama Mishra's report for DD India.
And still to come on DD India News Hour. Thousands of protesters take to streets of Istanbul to protest the arrest of the city's mayor. South Korea's Constitutional Court says it will deliver a decision on Prime Minister Han Duck-soo's impeachment next Monday. United States and Taliban hold talks in Kabul on release of prisoners.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
इंडिया में जितने इंडियंस हैं उतने ही इंडियाज भी. So for the record, this is my India.
This is my Andekha. Unsuna.
Unbelievable India. This is my
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. Turkey seized the construction company co-owned by detained Istanbul Mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu on Thursday, based on financial crime investigation reports. Meanwhile, thousands of protesters took to the streets of Istanbul to protest the arrest of the city's mayor. Authorities also detained 37 suspects for allegedly making provocative posts, inciting crime and hatred over the detention. Turkey arrested İmamoğlu on Wednesday on charges such as graft and aiding a terrorist group. Also, Istanbul mayor has urged the judiciary to take a stand against the Turkish government's alleged misuse of the courts to order his detention. Speaking on the incident, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz sharply criticized the arrest of the mayor of Istanbul, calling the situation a very worrying sign for EU-Turkey relations.
Improve relations between Europe and Turkey. That is why the arrest of such a key opposition politician and the mayor of Istanbul is a very, very bad sign. It is a bad sign for democracy in Turkey, but it is certainly also a bad sign for relations between Europe and Turkey. We can only call for an immediate end to this and for the opposition and the government to compete with each other rather than the opposition being put on trial.
Iran is reviewing a letter from former US President Donald Trump and the present president as well. The letter urges Tehran to negotiate a new nuclear deal. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said Iran will consider both threats and opportunities. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei earlier dismissed the letter as deceptive. Reports suggest Trump gave Iran 2 months to comply or face tougher sanctions. Araghchi confirmed Iran will respond soon, but ruled out direct talks under pressure.
The letter in reality carries more of an aspect of threat, but it also claims to offer opportunities. We have worked on all aspects of the letter. We have carefully considered all its points, and the response that will be prepared will take care of all these aspects into account. We will consider both the threat and the opportunities aspects.
The Taliban administration's foreign minister Amir Khan Muttaqi met US Special Envoy for Hostage Affairs Adam Boehler on Thursday, discussed the release of prisoners. An Afghan foreign ministry statement said. The ministry further added the leaders also discussed bilateral relations and consular services for Afghan in the US. Boehler was accompanied by Washington's former envoy to Kabul, Zalmay Khalilzad. Following the meet, US citizen George Glazman has been freed after 2 years detention in Afghanistan and is en route to Qatar. Glazman was detained in 2022 while visiting Kabul as a tourist. US President Donald Trump will sign a long-anticipated executive order on Thursday that aims to shut down the Department of Education, acting on a key campaign pledge, according to a White House summary seen by a news agency. Even before it was signed, the order was being challenged by a group of Democratic State Attorney General who filed a lawsuit seeking to block Trump from dismantling the department and halt the layoffs of nearly half of its staff announced last week. The NAACP, a leading civil rights group, also blasted the expected order as unconstitutional. Trump and his billionaire advisor Elon Musk have attempted to shut down government programs and institutions such as US Agency for International Development without congressional approval, but abolishing the Department of Education would be Trump's first bid to shut down a cabinet-level agency. The European Union has said that its tariffs targeting American goods in retaliation for US levies on steel and aluminium would start mid-April. It's 2 weeks later than planned to give more time for dialogue. US President Trump's 25% tariffs on imports of metals took effect on March 12th, to which the European Union immediately responded with 2 sets of countermeasures set to begin on April 1st and mid-April. Among the US products said to be targeted were bourbon, boats, motorbikes. Sources inform France, Spain and Italy pushed the European Commission to delay its measures, which have already triggered a Trump threat to hit back at Europe's wine and spirits sector with the punishing 200% tariffs. According to sources, bourbon could potentially be withdrawn altogether from the list of targeted goods. On to some business news now. The US stocks jumped on Wednesday as the Federal Reserve held interest rates steady after policy meeting. US Central Bank's rate decision was widely expected, although it also cut its growth forecast for 2025 and hiked its inflation outlook. Here's more.
The US Federal Reserve paused interest rate cuts again on Wednesday and warned of increased economic uncertainty as it seeks to navigate an economy unnerved by President Donald Trump's stop-start tariff rollout. Policymakers voted to hold the US Central Bank's key lending rate at between 4.25% and 4.5%. They also cut their growth forecast for the year 2025 and hiked their inflation outlook while still penciling in 2 rate cuts this year, in line with their previous forecast in the month of December. US Fed Chief Jerome Powell said that the risk of recession had risen slightly in recent weeks, but was not yet a cause for concern.
It is going to be very difficult to have a precise assessment of how much of inflation is coming from tariffs and from other, and that's already the case. You may have seen that goods inflation moved up pretty significantly in the first 2 months of the year. Trying to track that back to actual tariff increases, given what was tariffed and what was not, very, very challenging. So some of it, the answer is clearly some of it. A good part of it is coming from tariffs, but we'll be working, and so will other forecasters, to try to find the best possible way to separate non-tariff inflation from tariff inflation.
In an unusual move, Fed Governor Christopher Waller opposed the Fed's rate decision because of his colleagues' support for slowing down the pace at which it is shrinking the balance sheet. Now, US President Donald Trump said the Federal Reserve would be better off cutting rates as US tariffs start to ease their way into the economy. All 3 major Wall Street indices closed higher on the news, while government bond yields fell after the Fed announced it would slow down the rate at which it is reducing its balance sheet, which swelled during the pandemic. Most Asian equities also rose Thursday after US Federal Reserve boss Powell suggested any increase in consumer prices caused by tariffs would likely be short-lived. Anamika Pandey's report for DD India.
South Korea's Constitutional Court on Thursday said it will deliver a decision on Prime Minister Han Duck-soo's impeachment next Monday. Han, who first took over as acting president after Yoon Suk-yeol was impeached for declaring martial law on December 3rd and was later impeached by the parliament just 13 days after taking office. Han's impeachment came after he declined to immediately appoint 3 justices to fill vacancies at the Constitutional Court. Later, Finance Minister Cho Sang-mok assumed the role of acting president of South Korea. Let's now take a look at other stories making news around the world. Finland has been named the world's happiest country for the 8th consecutive year in the UN-sponsored World Happiness Report. Researchers attribute this to strong democratic institutions, low corruption and a high quality of life. Meanwhile, United States has dropped to its lowest ranking ever. Rwanda-backed M23 armed group has taken control of Walikale, a key mining hub in eastern Congo. Security and local sources confirm it as the latest territory to fall in the group's ongoing advance. The conflict continues to escalate, raising regional security concerns. France's iconic Roquefort cheese is celebrating 100 years of its designation of the origin. Producers hope the milestone will boost sales amid a long-term decline. The cheese remains a symbol of French gastronomy despite shifting consumer trends. Food prices in Sweden have surged nearly 20% in 2 years, sparking public outrage. The government is holding talks with producers and distributors to address the crisis. Consumers are increasingly calling for boycott of major supermarket chains. The Lewis Glacier on Mount Kenya is shrinking rapidly and may disappear by 2030. Veteran guides say only small ice pockets remain on Africa's second highest peak. Scientists warn the loss could have severe environmental impacts. India is taking a big leap towards digital self-reliance. Under Atmanirbhar Bharat, the government launched a challenge to create an indigenous web browser. DD India correspondent Taposh Bhattacharya brings us the inputs.
India is making a bold move towards technological self-reliance. Under the Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative, the Ministry of Electronics and IT launched a groundbreaking challenge to develop India's very own web browser.
We as a country have been a great service nation. Now we must become a product nation also. Service nation is a great industry that must continue to grow, but simultaneously we must now also become a product nation.
Leading the charge, CDAC Bangalore inspired innovators across the nation. Zoho Corporation takes the top spot, followed by Team Ping and Team Ajna, with a special mention for Jio Vishwakarma.
The old mindset where only the certain government institutions would be developing everything has to now give in to a new mindset where a much broader partnership of academia, startups, students, researchers, they all must join together to create new solutions.
Now, why does this matter? Because a browser is the gateway to the internet with built-in security, data privacy, and compatibility across iOS, Windows, and Android. This marks a giant leap for India's digital future. A nation that once led in IT services is now building its own tech stack. India is not just surfing the web, it's redefining it. Tapas Bhattacharya's report for DD India.
You're watching News Hour. Let's take a look at other stories making news today. India's Border Security Force and State Bank of India have signed an MOU to enhance benefits under Central Armed Police Salary Package. The initiative aims to provide exclusive banking services, financial assistance and special benefits to both serving and retired BSF personnel. India's Ministry of Statistics and Programme Implementation organized a brainstorming session in New Delhi on leveraging non-conventional data sources for official statistics. The session focused on exploring innovative methods to enhance data collection and analysis in the era of rapid digital transformation. 13 Indian fishermen released from Sri Lankan prison arrived in Tamil Nadu's Chennai on Thursday. They were arrested by Sri Lankan Navy for allegedly fishing outside the approved boundaries. Still to come on DD India News Hour. Legislative business in both houses of India's parliament witnessed disruptions. India's Defence Acquisition Council gives nod to procure T-90 tanks for the army.
इंडिया में जितने इंडियंस हैं उतने ही इंडियाज भी. So for the record, this is my India.
This is my Andekha. Unsuna.
Unbelievable India.
This is my favorite designer wear wala India.
My Sakhat Energy Hero India.
এই হলো আমার দুর্দান্ত রোড ট্রিপের ইন্ডিয়া. So India, join the Waves Explorer Challenge.
Show us what makes you say, for the record.
This is my India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. Israel begins ground operation in northern Gaza. Qatar, Egypt push for joint efforts to implement ceasefire. European leaders discuss support for Ukraine in Brussels. US-Russia ceasefire talks to begin on Monday. Trump to sign order to shut down Department of Education, calling it a big con job. Needs support of Democrat senators. We now return to our top story of Russia-Ukraine conflict and the ceasefire developments. Joining me is Ambassador Sanjay Bhattacharya, former senior diplomat, seasoned diplomat, also a former Secretary MEA. Good evening and welcome, sir. Now, how do you read the momentum towards negotiated peace as far as Russia-Ukraine conflict is concerned, even as the intense fighting we know continues?
I'm particularly pleased that the momentum is moving towards peace rather than continuation of war. And I think that is the most significant development that we've seen over the last few days. And I see three principal actors over here. The Americans, principally led by Trump, who have changed the course of US decision-making and their support to Ukraine now moving towards the establishment of peace. The second is the two principal players in the business, which is Russia and Ukraine. And while Russia was continuing the war and Ukraine was receiving support from various allies in Europe and America to continue the war, there seems to be a new thinking on that. And this has come about largely because of the US interventions, first with Russia in Riyadh, and then with the Ukrainians again in Riyadh. And now I understand that there will be further talks which will probably have both the Ukrainians and the Russians. And I think there's a third actor over here, which is the Europeans. And I think in some ways the Europeans have been shut out of the process. And they are trying to get back into it, which they should, because for them, this is a very important development that is taking place. But I warmly welcome the momentum towards peace.
Right. Ambassador Bhattacharya, I want to talk about some immediate developments. While there is a certain understanding to pause attacks on one another's energy infrastructure to begin with, that President Putin also agreed with, but President Zelensky says that Russia has not lived up to that first commitment. So what really is in store then for the larger ceasefire that we're talking about?
Right. No, I think we must be careful about this process of negotiation and must realize that a lot of this will be step by step, and it may not be possible to get everything in the first round itself. As you would recall, when the negotiators had come out of Riyadh after the discussions with the Ukrainians, it did appear that there would be a much broader 30-day ceasefire. And I think there were discussions which were looking at, not conclusive, which would look at air, sea, and land. But I think what happened in the process of the conversations that President Trump had with President Putin and then subsequently also with President Zelensky, this got diluted to certain elements alone and not the entire process. But I don't lose heart in that because I think it's a process that's going on. There will also be some posturing, and I think President Putin has put out a rather maximalist position, which is what Russia would like to put out at this stage. And while Zelensky, before he went to Oslo, had a more conciliatory approach about agreeing with President Trump's proposal, once he went to Oslo, he had a slightly different tone because all the Europeans were there. So there will be some going back and forth on this, but I think we should not worry too much about it.
And sir, once the talks begin between the delegates of US and Russia on Monday, would you say that two of the most contentious issues are going to be, one, the territorial integrity of Ukraine, and you could read it either ways from Ukraine or Russia's perspective, and the security arrangement in the region?
Right. I would think from the Russian perspective, the security aspects, the kind of deployments that might be there in Ukraine, the kind of rearmaments that Ukraine might get during this period will be of key concern. Whereas for Ukraine, the key issue would be what is the kind of formulation they have regarding the areas that are currently under the occupation of Russia. And so I feel that on both these issues, there will be little or no conclusion at the talks that will probably take place in Riyadh in a couple of days. But what I do think will happen is that they will agree on the parameters for the ceasefire. So whether this is going to be just energy infrastructure, whether this is going to include some other facilities, communication centers, connectivity centers, ports, airports, what kind of elements would be included in this? And I think some of that detail will be worked out between the technical people who will be meeting. And I think once you have that initial phase of ceasefire, once there is a relative calm, you can actually sit back a bit, both Ukraine and Russia, and reassess the situation to get onto those two very key issues that you rightly mentioned about the security scenario as well as the territories.
So you earlier mentioned that the manner in which Europe has been shut out of the talks, for now at least, and there's a flurry of activity in Europe that we see from concerns about security for Ukraine to their own future in the days ahead. How do you see the kind of role that Europe is likely to play in the negotiations ahead and beyond that?
I feel Europe has a very key role in this entire business. I think the reason why the Americans have shut the Europeans out was because America felt that Europe was not contributing sufficiently to the cause of overall defense of that particular theater. And therefore, Europe needed to make greater commitments to the defense expenditures that it was going to make and the kind of defense postures that it would have, particularly regarding the GDP, the defense expenditure to GDP ratio, the kind of force lift capabilities that it would have, and the kind of attitude and approach it might have towards, in future, towards Russia. And I think it was for this reason that Europe was somewhat kept out of these negotiations, somewhat kept out. But I don't think that's going to be the medium-term solution either, because Europe will have to be integrated. At the end of the day, this is in their backyard. They will need to be consulted and they will need to be involved, because if they're not, they will actually end up being spoilers to a peace process. And that's not something that we would wish to have.
And this shutting out of Europe also appears like a certain symptom of at least the idea of dismantling of the Western bloc of America-led West. Do you also see that idea being challenged ever since President Trump has taken office?
You know, quite frankly, I see this has kind of gathered momentum during the Trump presidency in the last few weeks. But this is not a new idea. When the idea of Europe was coming about, and they had agreed that they would not have a war amongst themselves, they did say that they would need to prepare for war against external forces. And even after the Cold War, so to say, came to a close, Europe did not give up its Cold War because its opposition to Russia continued. But it did not put in the material that was required for its own defense purposes. There was discussion, say, about 2 decades ago, when the European Union was talking about building force capability of its own, of independent brigades, of lift capacities, of its own R&D being converted into armaments that would go into the European armies. But that did not continue. Of course, there were various factors, including the economic situation, which was somewhat recessionary in large parts of the larger countries of Europe. But that said, Europe did not pitch in for the defense effort as it could have and it should have. But today, I think we see there is a change in that approach, and that will bring about the new balance that will be required, and Europe will play its due role, I'm sure.
But given the new bonhomie between the United States and Russia, what are the real stakes, according to you, for Ukraine when American and Russian delegates meet in Riyadh?
So, I think this is really a two-stage scenario. One is that geoeconomics has shifted from the European continent towards Asia. And I think the Western world needs to look at this particular issue. And the involvement or close partnership with Russia would actually be beneficial for Europe to get back its economic muscle. You do realize that at some point of time, not very long ago, the G7 had expanded to a G8, and that the Europeans were depending heavily on Russian fuel to power their economic growth. And that can come back again, and that would help revive their economy, which is very important and an extremely essential element in the overall configuration of national power. And the second thing is about power itself, because today, Europe is more content saying that they are depleting Russia. But that is a very fallacious concept in itself, because Russia is a much greater power than the Europeans would wish to admit in public, particularly when they are engaged in a war against it. And so the fact that the geopolitics will require that Europe be a viable strategic unit of force that can actually play its due weight is something that was missing. And I think that adjustment is being, in a sense, forced by the Trump era. But I think this is something that many people in the Europe had been thinking about. There are also new political trends within Europe, if you look at it more deeply. And many of these are looking at a greater role for Europe itself, not just about, the 2 or 3 larger countries in Europe leading the charge, but of having a more cohesive unit of Europe, of European identity that can then assert itself. So that will bring about this new balance that is necessary, because it's quite clear that US is definitely not the only superpower. It has to work with many others. The bonhomie that you see is perhaps an exaggerated comment, but perhaps it is something that is necessary to bring about the relations, the understanding of what Russia can mean in the second part of this 21st century. Because the 20th century was another story. Particularly the second half was one of animosity and competition. But can this be different in the 21st century?
And finally, sir, India has articulated a clear position on the Ukraine war in favor of peace. But how do we look at the geopolitics as it is getting transformed today, and particularly the world after the ceasefire, as and when it's achieved?
Right. In some ways, it vindicates our position, because, we have always had this very principled position that you should strive for peace, not war. That is not the way we deal with things in the 21st century. Prime Minister had said that this is not the era of war. And I think that had not been fully understood by many in Europe. And I think many of the statements off the cuff that had come from European leaders were rather uncharacteristic, but also, they were not fully understanding what the reality of the situation was. So I think now we have this situation where we have this ability to have peace, even if it is transient, even if it is for a short period of time, during which you can give diplomacy a chance. Essentially, you need to have negotiated settlements. Nobody's saying that the areas that have been taken over by Russia should remain with them or should not, or Ukraine needs to secede. This is something that Ukraine and Russia need to figure out. But I think this has to happen in a calm mind, in a calm atmosphere, not in the heat of war. This cannot happen. And therefore, I think we are now getting back to the right track. And India's role in this must finally be acknowledged, because we had steadfastly talked about it. And there are other theaters, if I may add at this point, where we still see the continuation of conflict or of the use of force or the threat of use of force. And I think those tendencies need to be curbed in other centers as well.
On that note, Ambassador Sanjay Bhattacharya, thank you very much for joining us on the News Hour and sharing your perspective. Both houses of India's parliament witnessed disruption on Thursday in the lower house, or the Lok Sabha. The first adjournment came soon after the house began its sitting amidst sloganeering from the opposition. The Lok Sabha speaker condemned the opposition leaders for not behaving according to the rules and protocols of the house. He also reprimanded opposition leaders for wearing T-shirts in the House which had slogans written on them, asked the leaders to change. Meanwhile, Rajya Sabha saw multiple adjournments amidst protests from the opposition. Chairman of Rajya Sabha, Jagdeep Dhankar, first adjourned the House till 12:15 p.m. IST and then again till 2 p.m. before it was adjourned for the day. Dhankar called for a meeting of the floor leaders on something which he saw in the House and did not like. Both houses were adjourned for the day. The Defence Acquisition Council, chaired by India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, has approved capital acquisition proposals worth over 54,000 crore rupees. The decision includes procurement of advanced engines for T-90 tanks for Army, Varnashastra torpedoes for the Navy, airborne early warning and control systems for the Air Force. Ministry of Defence said the approvals are aimed at enhancing the capabilities of the Indian Armed Forces through procurement of advanced military equipment. In a major offensive against Naxals, at least 30 members of the banned CPI Maoists were killed in two separate encounters in India's central state of Chhattisgarh. According to officials, 26 Naxals were killed in Bijapur district. 4 others were gunned down in Kanker area by a joint team of the BSF and DRG personnel of the state police. A police Jawan was also martyred in the encounter at Bijapur. The gunfight broke out at around 7 a.m. IST in the forests along the border of Bijapur and Dantewada district when a joint team of security personnel was out at an anti-Naxalite operation in Gangalore police station area in Bijapur. In a separate operation in Kanker district, 4 Maoists were killed in an exchange of fire near village Korskodo in Chotasbetia. Security forces were conducting combing operation when they came under attack and retaliated strongly. India's Home Minister has lauded soldiers for achieving another big success in the direction of Naxal Mukt Bharat Abhiyan or Maoist-Free India campaign. In a tweet, he says, and I quote, "The Modi government is moving forward with a hard approach against Maoists and is adopting a zero-tolerance policy against those Maoists who are not surrendering despite all the options ranging from surrender to inclusion. The country is going to be Maoist-free before 31st March next year." You're watching DD India News Hour. Time now for all the action from the world of sports. Khelo India Para Games 2025 were declared open by Union Minister of Youth Affairs and Sports Dr. Mansukh Mandavia on Thursday. Over 1,300 athletes are set to take part in the second edition of the Games. DD India's Abhishek Mahajan has more details.
Khelo India Para Games 2025 officially began with a grand opening ceremony on Thursday. Union Minister of Youth Affairs and Sports Dr. Mansukh Mandavia declared the Games open at the Indira Gandhi International Stadium in the national capital, Delhi. Accompanied by Paralympic medalist in para sports Simran Sharma, Praveen Kumar, Nitesh Kumar, Preeti Pal and others, the sports minister participated in the torch relay.
तो हमारे मुख्य अतिथि और सम्मानित अतिथियों ने टॉर्च को कॉलड्रॉन पे रख दिया है, जो खेलो इंडिया पैरा गेम्स 2025 की आधिकारिक शुरुआत का प्रतीक भी है।
मुझे विश्वास है कि खेलो इंडिया पैरा गेम्स के द्वारा देश के पैरा एथलीट्स को खेलने की अपॉर्चुनिटी मिलेगी, उसकी टैलेंट, उसकी क्षमता आने वाले दिनों में देश और दुनिया में भारत के पैरा एथलीट्स अपना स्वयं का और देश का नाम रोशन करेंगे.
Part of Government of India's Khelo India initiative, this is the second edition of the Games, which kick-started with a glittering opening ceremony, witnessing an electrifying performance by Meet Brothers. The ceremony also displayed India's indigenous sport Mallakhambh. Not only this, the opening ceremony also ensured inclusion by showcasing an act curated by Divyangjans. The Games will be played across 3 venues, Jawaharlal Nehru Stadium, IG Stadium and Dr. Karni Singh Shooting Range till March 27. It will be held in 6 disciplines: para-athletics, para-archery, para-powerlifting, para-badminton, para-table tennis and para-shooting. Over 1,300 athletes, 350 support staff and 150 volunteers are part of this edition.
Following the inaugural edition in December 2023, Khelo India Para Games has emerged as a key national event for the para athletes.
and has played a significant role in discovering and nurturing talent in India. With cameraman Monty Kumar Singh, this is Abhishek Mahajan in Delhi for DD India.
Kirsty Coventry has been elected as the president of International Olympic Committee (IOC) on Thursday, securing victory in a high-stakes vote at the 144th IOC session in Costa Navarino, Greece. The Zimbabwean won in the first round of voting to clinch the race to succeed Thomas Bach, winning an immediate overall majority in the secret ballot. Coventry beat Sebastian Coe, Juan Antonio Samaras Jr. and others in the election that had been expected to be a far closer run affair. As the new IOC president, Coventry will now be tasked with steering the Olympic movement into a new era, overseeing future games. She will also address key challenges such as rising costs, geopolitical tensions and evolving landscape of global sports governance. A groundbreaking moment for Indian football is on the horizon. The German Football Association and TSG Hoffenheim, in collaboration with TCG Digital, have introduced revolutionary technology to Indian football landscape. This breakthrough is set to redefine the future of Indian football, transforming talent acquisition and revolutionizing how the sports is consumed. Here's how.
As artificial intelligence continues to reshape the world, it was only a matter of time before the sports industry felt its impact. For the first time, AI will play a pivotal role in transforming talent scouting and player development in Indian football. During a press meet in New Delhi, the German Football Association, TSG Hoffenheim, and TCG Digital unveiled a revolutionary breakthrough in sports technology. This innovation aims to identify grassroots talent with precision, ensuring that the next generation of Indian football is discovered through data-driven insights. The event featured industrial experts providing exclusive insights and demonstrations of how AI and data analysis can identify players' potential and track performances real-time.
This will be a good pathway for the youngsters who are having, the first thing when it comes like the partiality comes, where you can't cheat. It's all about what you are delivering on the field, and it comes through the database analyst. All the data will be there, and you can have a help out. Coaches can help out where exactly you have to work on. And they can have ideas and they can improvise. More smart work will help with the players to grow.
The use of AI in scouting is expected to create a level playing field for young footballers across India. Talented players from remote areas and underrepresented areas could get the recognition and training they need to compete at the highest level.
I think technology is a huge factor in this. We just had an agreement with Prasar Bharati to stream all our matches on Waves, their new OTT platform. But what else can we do to make the product better? Multi-language commentary, automatic clipping of sequences, push to social media platforms. So we need to, and it's all of this for free. So we really want to expand the reach and hopefully create lots of football fans.
AI will also enhance broadcast experience on both television and social media, as it is designed to provide highlights and reports of the match within minutes of the final whistle. It will also provide short-format videos for deeper penetration on the internet. The initiative aims to enhance strategies for the game and injury prevention through advanced analytics, giving teams a competitive edge in global tournaments. The use of AI in player scouting and game analysis will change the Indian footballing landscape forever. This will ultimately pave the way for Indian football to shine on the global stage. With cameraman Srinivas, this is Mehar Raj Singh for DD India, Delhi.
With an objective to provide fun and supportive platform for young filmmakers to express their creativity and originality through film, Young Filmmakers Challenge has been organized at the World Audiovisual Entertainment Summit, WAVES.
Young Filmmakers Challenge, organized at WAVES, aims to empower children and teens to explore their imagination through short films. Young creators in two categories, aged between 12 to 15 years and 16 to 19 years, to dive into the world of filmmaking and unleash their creativity. It aims to foster innovation, storytelling skills, and digital literacy among young participants through a concise 60-second film format.
WAVES World Audio-Visual Entertainment Summit is India's first global summit which encompasses the entire media and entertainment industry. which includes film, animation, gaming, fashion, music, design. It includes esports. It will include all other verticals which are part of the media and entertainment industry. And that's really what we will be doing. We will be showcasing our best to the world.
While speaking about the summit, Chaitanya Chinchlikar, Vice President, Whistling Woods International, emphasized 3 important pillars of media and entertainment industry.
Waves has multiple parts. There's the conference where you've got the best of the best from the world coming in and talking on the same stage and showcasing their quality. Then you have the bazaar, the market, which will give great opportunity to Indian original IP creators to pitch, as well as people who have ideas for films, for animation, for games. That's the second part. Third is the showcase, where we will be showcasing some of our best work that's done in various areas of the industry.
About Create in India challenges, he said the waves will witness the best of the best, and the summit will enable intermingling of some of the best creative minds in the country.
So for any country to get genuinely global, world class at the top level, you need 3 things. You need government will, you need government ability, and that has been amply showcased. There is a film policy. We have a new cinematography bill. We have a new animation, visual effects, gaming, comics and XR policy, India's first national policy. We have the setting up of the IICT, the Indian Institute of Creative Technologies, which will focus on that.
The challenge will promote storytelling, build confidence in children and teens by giving them the opportunity to showcase their talent on a global stage and celebrate diversity that young filmmakers bring to the screen.
With camera person Gaurav Kagra, this is Shama Mishra for DD India, Mumbai.
Before we wrap up, let's take you to the spectacular images from Tehran, where Iranians lit up the night sky with fireworks and danced around bonfires. The fire festival is celebrated before the spring holiday of Nowruz. The Iranian New Year begins on March 21st. And that's all for this edition of DD India News Hour. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. This app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India.